Thank you very much, Joanna. You touched a few important issues, really. Now, we would like to take advantage of the presence of our panelists as well. And to finish off with the P&I side of the business, we would like to take advantage of the presence of Christopher Brown from the UK club. And Chris, Mike has been talking about P&I, the perspective of the clubs in respect of use of armed guards. We have heard about kidnapping, ransom, Harlem machinery, war. We haven't mentioned P&I. So all of the vessels which are there, almost all of them, they have a P&I cover. So how P&I in general is or could be affected because of an act of piracy?
I'll try to make that one of the shorter answers. The underlying P&I policy remains in place. The risks that would normally be covered by P&I would continue to be covered if the cause is linked to piracy. And that typically is going to be loss of life, repatriation, illness. P&I clubs have dealt with issues like trauma claims, could be involved with cargo, wreck removal, pollution, and the like. But to qualify for that P&I, need to make sure that, as one of the hot topics of today, compliance with flag state and the Safety of Life at Sea Convention was mentioned. The numbers of people, the 60 people that could be on board, does that actually comply with the safety requirements?
Chris, just to finish off, say there is one thing which from time to time we're being asked and we're never quite sure what we have to answer about that. We said P&I, piracy under standard P&I cover is not an excluded risk, but still in the standard terms of cover there is an exclusion which is in relation to weapons of war. So it's not an excluded risk, but we are now talking of armed guards. We're talking of pirates using arms which could possibly be defined as weapons of war. What is the distinction? Should we, say, worry about the possibility of having an uninsured situation because of the type of weapons which are being used, either side, on the pirate side or even on the armed guard side?
That will be a tricky question over time, but generally to date, the position taken by the P&I insurers is that, because the exclusion, as you mentioned, is weapons of war or similar weapons, and maybe the Vice Admiral might have a different view of an RPG or an AK-47, but the arms that have been used to date, the P&I clubs are interpreting as that they're not weapons of war and they have not triggered the exclusions. But certainly the point of this discussion and one of the comments made, if the escalation in weapons continue, you could trigger these exclusions. And then the remedy for an owner, if you don't want to get into that legal fine point of do you have a weapon of war or not a weapon of war, is to be very careful placing war risk cover. So war risk P&I with the hull underwriter and consulting the brokers, making sure to declare the proper value of the vessel as well in that process.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Marco Poliseno, I mean, earlier on we were debating about confidentiality of, KNR cover in this patchwork of insurance policy that we have in the case of piracy, and you wanted to post a question for, one of the speakers.
Yes, thank you, Marco. First of all, thank you to give me the opportunity to be part of this interesting conference and to share my experience with you, which hopefully will help to add value and to clarify an aspect of this hot and at the same time critical topic that unfortunately nowadays represent one of the latest and crucial risks that shipping industry is facing. As you all know, around piracy there are a number of gray areas and without any clear and written guidelines. The one I would like to approach is about the non-disclosure recommendation that usually is stated in the KNR policies. And I would like to take the opportunity to ask to Tracy Thompson, representing Chartis, how underwriters will deal with this topic, with this matter, once it's clear that this kind of information normally pass to different stakeholders, let's say from ship owners, could say charters, sub-charters, war insurers, and in case of a claim probably with much more people because of cargo interest and a lot of others interest. Please.
Thank you. I think to answer the question, I'll give you the reason why the confidentiality clause is in a K&R insurance policy, and perhaps then you'll understand the purpose of it and how it actually works. The confidentiality clause is, to keep the policy, for a company to keep the policy confidential at all times. The reason being is we don't want that policy to be declared to employees or to seafarers, because in the event of an attack, a kidnap or a piracy, we don't want negotiations to be happening inside where they cannot be managed by the company. So that's the reason for having those clauses there. That being said, when policies are placed with us, it's normally understood from piracy is very different to traditional K&R. So under piracy, we understand that various parties will have knowledge of this policy. But again, we would expect it to be at a high level and that it does not come below where it doesn't need to. So we understand then in the event of a response where the K&R cover is triggered, that K&R policy is going to be discussed on a table with various lawyers, various insurers. So the main purpose, and I think it's important to actually understand the main purpose of the clause, was that hostages wouldn't start their own negotiations. So that really is the intention of the clause. So we clearly understand that parties will be privy to the policy. From an insurer's perspective, we're pretty okay with that, and that's usually declared to us on placing the policy.
Thank you, Tracy. That's, it's a very clear answer. It's a subject that has been frequently debated between various underwriters, both academically and also, unfortunately, when a case has happened, and that is a very, very clear answer. Thank you very much. On this purpose, I would like to hear a view of Andrea Papaioannou from your position of claims manager of a reputable hull underwriting company. At what stage you would like, to be involved in case of a piracy crisis? At the very beginning, at the later stage, to keep on the back seat, or, to fight as of the beginning?
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, I wish to congratulate the speakers for the very interesting and informative presentation. I've been lucky enough not to be involved recently, at least, in cases like that. It was not long time ago, but this acronym K&R was almost unknown to most of the hull claims community. Now it looks like we cannot live without full knowledge of this aspect. And coming to the point, yes, this is my main concern. When the parties involved in the handling of the claim, of course, we are talking about the phase when bad things have already happened, and it's not just minor physical damage to the vessel, which is, as we were discussing with Marco, we are ready to sign immediately for having only minor physical damages to the vessels. We are talking, of course, about hijacks and plenty of people involved, plenty of policies, K&R, of course, war, or as it used to, hull, and of course, cargo and P&I interest, etc. So to answer very quickly to the question, we would, as always, we would love to be in the picture as soon as possible. And what I would like to learn, taking the opportunity of having an experienced speaker today, and what's your experience? What's your attitude towards this involvement? It's going to be a crowded room if we take all the parties together, but maybe sooner or later we are going to be said if some party has not been part of the game from the beginning. So what's your...
I knew that K&R Insurance would get attention, so I think, you know, we talk about K&R piracy insurance, but we've been doing K&R for, you know, as I said, K&R's been around since, you know, the early 70s. The insurance has been around. So we're used to dealing with these type of complicated situations where you have different interests at a table, and it becomes, and everybody has a different objective at that table. As far as the K&R works, and again, please forgive me if you already know how it does respond, but as insurers, we don't get involved. We actually remove ourselves from that table. So when a K&R incident happens or a piracy attack happens, we get notified. It has been, to date, thankfully, normally within an hour, we get notified that an incident has occurred. Now, our consultants, our approved consultants, get involved, and they work with the client. So the K&R Insurance sits back here, and we reimburse the policy. So the consultants that we provide to clients work with those various insurers and sit at the table and give advice in that kind of complex situation. So as an insurer, we understand there are other parties involved, and we're very happy with that. I mean, you know, I can tell you the last two that we've had over the last few weeks, other insurers have been notified around the same time. So again, that isn't an issue. We take that as part of the job, as we would with any K&R insurance as well.
Thank you. We have now Alessandro Morelli. To Alessandro, to put up a question, not just very much in his role as underwriting manager of AXA Corporate Solution, but also and particularly as one of the chairman of the various commission of the IUMI conference of the Italian Association of the Underwriters. How do you see, in terms of information that you get from the shipowning community, how do you follow, from your perspective, the situation of piracy?
As a matter of fact, this is quite a crucial point as far as I'm concerned within the scope of particularly in IUMI, where I chair the Loss Prevention Committee. And this is a point I came on a number of times. Concerning the self-protection measures which are suggested in the BMP, we know nowadays the focus is mainly on the armed guards. We are all aware of this. But nonetheless, when I think of the BMPs, and considering that last summer the 4th edition has been issued, I understand from this that by some way this witnesses the importance that the industry attributes to these prevention measures. So I think that marine insurers as well should pay a closer attention to this in their process of risk assessment. But when I think about this, I realize that there is a weak point which is not a negligible one. In fact, in the IMB piracy report, there is no evidence of the self-protection measures which are employed on the ships which are attacked. And this in spite of the fact that ships, in fact, are required by the Piracy and Armed Robbery Attack Report, which is produced by the IMB. There are two lines, specifically in line 44 and 45, which asks, anti-piracy measures employed, please specify, and 45, was private security team embarked, yes or no, armed or unarmed. So in principle, the IMB puts a specific focus on this, but in fact, if you look at the piracy report, you find no information about this. So as I asked the association, the ANIA, who has a relationship with the IMB since it supports the Piracy Center, to ask specific question about this, and I can read you the extract, let's say, of the answer which we received from the IMB. They say that I think we need to find a way to encourage owners to make more comprehensive reports to us in this respect. So they say, in fact, we do not have this information. We consider that it would be helpful to have it. So I think that's the reason why we missed the evidence. I think it's important, on the other hand, to work on this. And I asked Yumi during the last conference in Paris. I put the question to Yumi as well, because I think that it is important to increase the consciousness on this aspect. As far as we marine insurers are concerned, I'm fairly sure this would give us a deeper instrument to have a more careful approach to the issue.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Just one question, taking advantage of the presence of Admiral Rinaldo Veri of the Italian Navy here. Admiral, we have heard of the many things which are happening for the prevention of pirate attacks. We have heard from the other speakers say of all the answers which the insurers, the many involved with the insurance, are providing in respect of piracy. We all know of Operation Atalanta for the patrolling of the Indian Ocean. We heard of possible use of armed or unarmed guards. All these are answers, but that's my view. I cannot see them as solutions. From your position and in your view, can you really see a real solution to the piracy issue in that area coming within a reasonable time?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for your very, very interesting question, but I must say that the answer is rather difficult because I don't think there is a present definitive solution to piracy. But I'm optimistic, unlike somebody else that wrote that's getting worse. I think it's going to get better. However, all the speakers over here were very, very smart in their presentations and gave us a very comprehensive view. So probably the few things I'm going to say I may repeat something already said, but I'd like to look at it from a military perspective and let us see what the difficulties are. The first difficulty is the area to cover. It was also said the Indian Ocean is very, very large, and with the amount of ships we have, they are utterly not sufficient. So how can that situation be improved? Probably using more maritime patrol aircraft, which can cover in the same time larger areas. There are already some used in the Seychelles, but I think the amount of those aircraft must be improved. Another area I see which is critical, and I am not an expert in legal affairs, and especially in an audience full of very famous lawyers, but I don't think enough emphasis has been put on the law, on international maritime law. I think there are many lacunae in this area because piracy goes back to the UNCLOS, which is in 1982, and there are some, it has been updated in a way in the SUA Convention and the SUA Protocol in 85 or 86 after the Achille Lauro episode, but there are more specifically concentrated on terrorism. I think something should be done to direct attention more on piracy. Because at the moment, I think pirates enjoy a sort of impunity, and they are very well aware of this, especially with reference to Western legislation. Another problem is that they are not military opponents. I get many questions from the layman, from the man of the road. How is it possible that Western navies with so sophisticated ships and arms cannot defeat a bunch of pirates? The problem is it's not a military problem, because if it was a military problem, they would not exist yesterday. We are dealing with an enemy which is not an enemy, is not a military enemy, and which has the law on their side, and even according to the circumstances in which they are caught, can be freed the next day, especially if they are brought to Europe, and especially if under certain circumstances they are allowed to declare themselves as political refugees. that means they are free the next day. So we have to take that into consideration too. And finally, we got to see what is the cause. Somalia is the cause because Somalia, as we all know, is a failed state. And it doesn't have a government since '91, and this lack of governance is what makes piracy proliferate. So what are we doing? We are the European Union is with Operation Atlanta. NATO is Operation Ocean Shield. They have many coalition maritime forces. But as I said, they're not enough. As far as, just to mention, and I will finish, as far as military armed guards on board, my personal opinion is I favor that. I favor that. We've heard everything about it. I think they will be effective in the short term, but I tend to prefer military protection detachments because in the operational and legal environment in which we are working now, they are more used they are more subject to convenient rules and regulations. I'm speaking about the ROEs, rules of engagement for the minimum use of force. And let's say they are more disciplined in how to use it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Any question from the audience? Sean, maybe Sean Cantwell wants to add. I don't think it's easy to speak after an admiral about that, but if you want to add anything or put up any question, you're very welcome.
I'll speak very briefly just because the kind Vice Admiral over here covered a lot of the same thoughts that the U.S. holds. But I want to start off, first of all, to thank Signore Francesco Lauro for his kind invitation to this event. It's an honor to be here and have the opportunity to hear the Italian industry's voice on this important issue and learn something, and also maybe share some insight from the U.S. Navy in the process. Not to say everything that everybody has already said, but you're dealing with a lucrative practice. I want to hit on a point that Joanne Steele made. If you hit the money lines, it's no longer lucrative. If it's no longer lucrative, people aren't going to invest in it anymore. But in the meantime, in trying to find that solution, we have what we have with the military presence out there, which unfortunately is confined to a containment and disruption policy. But we can't not have it out there. We look at this practice and it's affecting freedom of navigation, global maritime commerce, safety and security at sea. It's legally precarious, obviously. And there's a serious human factor attached to this. So what's the ultimate solution? The Vice Admiral hit it very straight. It's land-based. Once you get a firm land-based solution on the Somali mainland, then they can police their own waters. Then we don't deal with this. But in the meantime, you can't just say, I'm waiting for that solution. So the militaries are trying to do their best. And that takes me to the perspective of the U.S. Navy with regards to armed security. Very contentious topic, very hot topic right now. But I'll give sort of the U.S. Navy approach very briefly. One, follow best management practices first and foremost. There was a BIMCO statistic cited not too long ago that said 80% of shipping follows best management practices. 20% don't. Of the 20% that do not, resides the 1% of shipping that is successfully hijacked. So that's a point unto itself. However, after following that, if you want additional security, the United States Navy believes in the inherent right of self-defense. So that means self, crew, and vessel. However, we leave that up to the ship owner and the flag state. The Vice Admiral is absolutely right. There just isn't enough assets out there to cover an expansive water space like the Indian Ocean. So in the meantime, that's sort of I wouldn't say a stopgap, but a temporary measure for the industry in the meantime. However, this stance is caveated that you should vet whoever you're choosing very, very closely. You'll pay for what you get, and you'll pay for what you don't vet. So that's a warning. There are two statistics, one serious statistic that's backing all of this up, and that's we have a 0% success rate against any vessel that carries armed security teams. That's documented. Could that change? we don't know. But right now, it seems effective. So the U.S. Navy is watching it and seemingly has this stance. Outside of that, I'll leave it up to the chairman. But thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be present. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no questions, we thank you all for being patient. It's very late. Let's hand the micro over. Different from our predecessor, let's hope that we don't have a session on piracy next year, because this means that it has been defeated. From me, good evening, and I leave it to Federico, for a conclusion.
Good evening to everybody, and we pass on to the others because it's very, very late.
A very quick break for the coffee, and then we start with the cruise and passenger. I would like to have the cruise and passenger and the dry cargo speakers and chairmen here, so we do them in rapid succession. Same for the offshore and energy that are also connected. So there will not be too many changes. Thank you.